Vintage Story. It's one of those games that I feel gets unfairly compared to Minecraft often. While yes, its origins do stem from a Minecraft mod, saying they're the same is like saying a tabby cat and a mountain lion are identical, just because they both have fur. Where Minecraft is all sunshine and rainbows, sending you into a world filled with beauty and relative safety, Vintage Story has already pushed you down the stairs and made you say thank you for the experience. It's just that kind of game. From the moment you spawn in, you have a target on your back. Eldritch horrors crawl out of the Rust world, and hungry beasts roam the forest looking for their next meal. Which, if you haven't realized, is always you. And where the beasts and horrors fail, the weather will succeed. Both hot and cold climates aren't just inconveniences, they will kill you. Slowly, with happiness and much joy. So naturally, here we are after I installed this game like my hands were on fire. Because here's the thing, Minecraft, as much as I love it, hasn't been scratching that survival itch in recent years. Don't get me wrong, it's an incredible game, an absolute pioneer in its genre. I won't be abandoning it anytime soon, but there's always a part of my brain that wanted survival to feel like, well, survival. To struggle to earn safety. Which raises an important question. Could I, a builder with the combat instincts of a wet noodle, actually survive here? Or was I about to experience death loop after death loop? So sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and even put this on in the background, because it's a wild ride. Now, my journey began like most do. I had to design my character. Being a past simmer, I knew that this was going to be extremely important, and I had to put a lot of thought into it, because if I was going to get torn apart, I may as well do it looking good. So after that, I was then brought to the character class selection page, and let me tell you, my indecision was running rampant. I think I read all the skills multiple times to make sure that I was picking the right one. But eventually, we were ready to drop into the world. Like the beginning of every good survival game, I found myself collecting a plethora of resources, like I was auditioning for the role on American Hoarders. If something wasn't physically nailed down, it was coming with me, and even if it was, I would find a way to rip it up. Sticks, berries, flint, you name it, it was coming with me. The strategy worked like magic for all of about 5 minutes before something became glaringly obvious. See, in Vintage Story, you're not blessed with a large, seemingly magic storage from the moment you spawn. You're given 10 hotbar slots and the temptation of unlimited resources. You're then told to figure something out. And I could not resist the temptation, so I needed to figure something out fast. So, of course, something had to be sacrificed. And no, I'm not meaning curbing my tendency to collect everything. That would be silly. Naturally, I declared war on an entire ecosystem of plant life, possibly causing irreversible species eradication. Because if large corporations have taught me anything in life, it's that no problem can't be fixed by crimes against nature. So every cattail, root, and small shrub was going to come with me, because I'll be damned if I need something in the future and I didn't have enough of it to fill a battleship. I knew the first few days would be crucial in my journey. I didn't want to settle down too fast, and I needed copper nodes marked on my map. I needed food, and ideally to find a biome that wouldn't kill me on site and would provide a good foundation for future farming. Overall, my travels were thankfully uneventful, though that isn't always the best for content, so you're going to see me jumping around quite a lot. I found many traders selling basic wares, had a comfortable amount of food, and the local wildlife left me mostly alone. And that was saying something, seeing as I nearly walked into several large fur-covered creatures and managed to run away without so much as a scratch. My survival was less due to talent and more to do with early decision making. When choosing my class, I initially debated between increased movement speed and decreased detection range. In the end, I ended up choosing the latter, and I was more than grateful for the decision. Turns out, not being seen was really good at keeping you alive, especially if you were stupid like I am. My ecological crusade offered boon after boon, and soon I had enough copper to really think about making tools. It felt like I could finally step onto the path that would take me from hitting things with slightly sharp rocks to hitting things with precious earth metals. It felt wonderful. Now, I say all that like I have any confidence in my ability to progress. I'd like to be clear. I've had exactly one previous playthrough beneath my belt, and I barely made it to my first winter where I died cold and utterly alone. Fortunately, the early game resource grind has always been my bread and butter in any game I've played, and I could feel myself picking up momentum. I've recently fallen down the World of Warcraft rabbit hole in my free time, so the rhythm of gather, stash, repeat felt very comforting, despite the occasional reminder that everything in this world would love to eat me with a side of fries. Eventually, even my hoarder mindset had to admit defeat to Vintage Stories storage. My inventory was overflowing, and I could only place one reed basket on my back before I moved at the pace of an over-encumbered snail. Carrying my entire life was becoming less like Dora Goes on a Journey and more like overburdened pack mule. It was finally time to settle down and find somewhere permanent. In all of my wandering, I tried to remain close to world spawn, out of a sense of safety and future-proofing. Luckily, that's when I saw it. The absolute perfect location. A snow-capped mountain range, stretching to the sky like some sort of Game of Thrones landscape. It would be perfect. This was definitely where I needed to settle. So I hauled myself and my overstuffed inventory up the slope, finding a suitable flat patch of land with decent soil. If I had a flag, I would have planted it, because everything the light touched in this area was going to be mine. I was finally able to unload everything, and it felt incredible. For the first time since spawning, I had inventory space. But that joy lasted the span of maybe a heartbeat, because reed baskets, while charming, cute, and amazing for building clutter, were not what one would call storage efficient. Unless I truly wanted to fall into the logistical mindset of Amazon, I needed a better plan of action, because I don't think the ecosystem could have survived. So, I made a mental list. First, I needed to process my copper. This meant preparing casts and setting up the beginnings of an actual tool progression. Ideally, I wanted to have everything gathered and ready so we could jump straight into the second item on the list, shelter. While I would start by building with whatever I had handy, I wanted to have something that I would be proud to come home to. If something went sideways and I died, I needed to avoid the dreaded respawn loop and hopefully lower my cortisol over dying by having a pretty base that I could run out of. Third and finally, I needed somewhere that I could sustainably farm. Foraging had carried this journey on its back thus far, but stuffing my face with whatever plant was nearby wasn't a good long-term strategy. I needed farming, and I needed to think about what animals would make for the best soup. Because in Vintage Story, it takes upwards of 10 generations to get anything tamed. Unfortunately, the local wildlife wasn't nearly as plentiful as I'd hoped, and booming agriculture doesn't sprout overnight. So, for now, I would have to set the goal aside and live off whatever I could get my hands on. But in the midst of this beautiful chaos of getting everything ready, of course the inevitable had to happen. A nearby rift just had to decide that it wanted a taste of my flesh, and it spit out my first ever monsters in this world. And they're spawning. Oh my gosh. Well, that's not good. I'm just going to run. I knew it would happen sooner or later, but I was hoping that that moment would be much, much later. What are we gonna do about this? I think first we need to get some blocks. There it is. Ugh. Oh my gosh. Get out of my way. Ow. Oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I can't even see it probably. Oh my gosh. Yep, it's gonna kill me. Yep. Oh no, this is not very good. And there's a bow turn. Oh my. OMG. Okay, well. I am going to go dig myself into a little hole and wait until daylight has broken, because holy crap. I cannot deal with that. Oh. Alright, screw waiting. I do not want to wait. I really can't afford to wait. Oh, but it's so dark over here. I need to run in, pick this up, please. And I need to go. Falling asleep in the middle of a field definitely wasn't what I was expecting. But hey, I could have died and that would have been way, way worse. So, thanks to those Eldritch horrors, I was now a little bit behind on my clay forming, so I rushed over just to get it all done before the next day because I really didn't want to be caught out in a temporal storm without any copper tools to my name. And can we talk about how tedious some of these molds are to make? Later on, I end up making a lot of shingles and that took forever to do it one by one. I wish we had something like a pottery wheel, and I know there is a mod for it, but it feels a little bit cheap. What do you guys think down in the comments below? Do you think I should add that for more extravagant builds later on, or do you think I should just suffer and bear through it like the rest of us playing Vintage Story? While I put them onto fire, I decided that I was going to go out and explore and forage a little bit more because I was getting a touch low on food for comfort. Luckily, right around the corner was something completely unexpected that I definitely had to get my grubby little hands on at some point in this playthrough. Silvite. Why does that sound familiar? Is this a meteor? No. No? What is Silvite from? Silvite impact rock. No, this has got to be a meteor. Where is it? Yeah, this is meteoric iron, right? There it is. Alright, so we need iron to break it. Wow, okay, that's... Wow, that's so close to the base. That's like insanely rare, right? I don't know, that feels insanely rare. With that incredible find safely marked on the map, I set out with kind of a pep in my step. I was mainly looking for copper, but anything that wasn't nailed down would be coming with me. I combed the terrain carefully, trying to scan for exposed stone and that glimmer of green, but I really didn't find very much. So, dejected, I returned home and pivoted into what I now call Project Infrastructure, which is basically a fancy word for I procrastinated until my pottery was done and I could finally start mining copper. But even building in Vintage Story could not be peaceful. I was getting shot at and maimed by every googly moogly that decided to come out of the dark, and let me tell you, this house was not something that I am very proud of and was definitely made out of desperation just to get out of the darkness and from the baying wolves that were nearby. But the wolves were not going to be the thing that claimed my first life in this game. Oh no, that would be far too epic for a karma thing. Instead, it was this little red fox that I was trying to help out of this hole when I accidentally hit it. And like the temperamental little creature it is, it decided that it was going to bite my ankles into a literal frenzy of anger. I have never seen something this small have this much aggression. But it did, and it claimed my first ever life, which was definitely a little bit of a sore spot, and I debated going after it, but decided that I did not want the humiliation of being killed twice by a little red fox. So instead, I tried to cheer myself up with my first ever copper processing, and let me tell you, this felt so satisfying to finally get underway. I didn't have enough copper pieces to do anything extra, but this would jumpstart me so far into the building process, and I could finally start doing what I actually wanted to do in Vintage Story, which, shocker shocker, was to play with the chisel. Because of course I would love to play with something that let me build down to the individual pixels. I'm sure sure this totally won't turn into a time sink later on where I'm carving one statue for 13 hours and then have to record that. But to get to the point of beautiful, beautiful pixel crafting, I would need more tools. So it was back again with the clay, and I was making mold after mold, including an anvil mold, so that I could finally get my copper journey underway, and I could just focus on that purely while these were cooking. Of course, no pit kiln was complete unless it set me on fire just for vengeance and spite. After a sufficiently good amount of sleep, I decided that today was the day that I was going to line my pockets with as much copper as I could possibly carry. I set out with basic food and I was determined to find something. But of course, me being me, I couldn't just go to one of the nodes that I had found previously. Oh no, I had to try and find some that were closer. And let me tell you, this was such a waste of a day because I found barely any copper, and it took so long to get what I needed, and it just was such a waste of time. But you live and you learn, and I did not make the mistake for the next veins, and I went to ones that I had already found previously. But thankfully, by some blessing of benevolence, I was able to scrounge up enough copper to make an anvil, which would put me in the crosshairs for making a chisel in the next few veins. It also gave me enough to make an axe and a shovel, which would speed up a lot of my resource gathering dramatically. But of course, with it being Vintage Story, it couldn't just do this without any troubles. So I had some grouchy neighbors banging at my door the next morning that I had to deal with. I see you there, you little bugger. Stop throwing rocks. Thankfully, I was able to defeat it without much hassle, though it could have been a little bit cleaner, so I harvested his body and I moved on with my game plan for today, which once again was more copper. And let me tell you, when I wanted to find something close, I probably should have gone in the opposite direction, because I found a node literally on my back doorstep, and here is my live reaction to it. Guys, look at my purple eyes. How did we miss this? How did I miss this? Well, okay. I guess we're just gonna start mining here. And mine there I did. This single node gave me more than the others combined, and I really felt super stupid for overlooking it in the first place. But it still wasn't enough. We wanted a decent amount of copper to begin so that I didn't get pulled away from building halfway through. So we found yet another node and mined it like our hands were on fire, returning home to do the exact same smelting process we had done before. But this time, it was looking like I would get my building wish sooner than I thought. So now that I knew I could, I jumped into a creative world and began planning my first ever base. As you can see, there is a lot of failed attempts in the background, and that's because Vintage Story, while it seems very similar to Minecraft, the building is actually quite a bit more complex, and the learning curve is quite steep. So I spent a good chunk of time in this world just trying to get a rough layout. I wouldn't end up using it the most, and if you guys want any building tips on how to build in Vintage Story, I'll definitely do a video on that. But this gave me a rough outline of what I wanted my starter house to look like and what sort of materials I would need to be gathering while my tools cooled off. With the starter structure now planned out in a creative world, it was only a matter of making the correct tools and collecting the right materials. So I set about making some nails and strips so that I could finally address the egregious storage issues, and then I set about collecting more resources. Unfortunately for me, my hubris and nonchalantism finally caught up to me. No amount of decreased detection range would save me from running literally square into a wolf just taking a nice cozy nap, and because I had storage on my back, I was no longer fast enough to outrun it. So, of course, it claimed another one of my lovely 9 lives, and I had to grumble my way back to getting my stuff to continue my resource grind. Man, this walk of shame back is really reminding me of WoW. Anyone ever died in a dungeon and have to make that walk back? Because I make it a little too often. Because I seemingly hadn't learned my lesson, I didn't immediately run away, but thankfully the wolf got distracted by something else and decided not to chew on my leg again and make me do the epic run back. So now it was time to go and gather resources, and let me tell you, this oak tree was an absolute godsend. It was a behemoth of a structure, and I am so glad that I brought enough axe power to chop it down, because it would satisfy my wood needs for a long time to come. On my way home, I gathered another copper node that I found and almost ran headfirst into this not so friendly Yogi bear, but thankfully it was full and happy with Raccoon, so it left me mostly alone and we parted like 2 ships in the night. Now it was once again time to sit and watch copper literally melt because I needed to make a chisel. I could feel building right on the cusp and I was going to be damned if I waited another day to do it. So I sat here watching it until it melted so I could pour it into the molds and go to sleep and speed up the time. But of course, no progress came without the obligatory Eldritch horrors trying to end my life. Thankfully, it proved to be only a mild distraction and I was once again back to resource grinding. I only had a couple of things left to gather and I would be able to start my lovely masterpiece. But of course, I was still missing a couple of things, but being the impatient individual I am, I just had to see what the foundation and positioning of this build should be. So I just laid out some conglomerate stones to plan out a basic floor plan like the one I'd made in Creative, just to get an idea and a visualization of what it's going to look like with the backdrop behind it. And let me tell you, I don't know if you guys can see it as well as I can, but this is going to look absolutely beautiful by the time I've got it done. But now came the absolutely dreaded process of making these individual shingles because I decided that I wanted to chisel an entirely custom roof, and now I would spend 30 minutes just making enough shingles to hopefully cover it all. I honestly don't know why I do this to myself. I must love pain because this took an ungodly amount of time just sitting there with clay in my hands forming these tiny little shingles. But it was finally done and all that was left was to fire them. So I picked obviously the most inconvenient location for the pits, which was right in front of my house that I was trying to build, and set them to cook. While I was waiting, quite impatiently if I might say myself, for the tiles to cook, I did some basic terraining. I wanted to have a couple of farm plots off to the side of this build, so I knew I needed a little bit of flat space. Did I choose the best dirt in the world? Absolutely not. Would I probably have to change this out to medium fertility eventually? Yes. Would shivers and drifters also spawn under this platform? Double yes, but I'll fix that later on, I promise. Totally, because torches aren't eternal in this game, because of course they're not. I had quite a good stockpile of resources, so I was really quite eager to start building this process. So I just sat here twiddling my thumbs, waiting for these tiles to finally harden, because I didn't really plan ahead that well when planning this build. So my little squirrel brain decided to screw waiting and try to make as much of this build as I could without any of the tiles that would be on top. Because I couldn't wait if my life depended on it. My brain has constantly got to be working through some sort of problem, and sitting felt like torture. So I would rather risk very flammable blocks being right next to a fire than wait a moment longer. Thankfully, Vintage Story wasn't as cruel as it could have been, and my house remained perfectly intact by the time I woke up the next morning to a fresh batch of shingles ready and hardened to be used. So now, armed with my chisel and the tools at my disposal, it was time for me to prove why I am the master builder that you guys all love to watch. So I'm just gonna let it play in the background, put on some relaxing music, and you guys can watch this beautiful build unfold in real time. Now, I would love to say that this was a successful first episode, but we didn't even complete the house. So I guess we're going to unfortunately have to push it to the next episode because my computer wasn't made for storage. So I have already completely maxed out all my drives and I don't have any room to record anymore. So, as much as I hate to say it, the rest of this build is going to have to continue in the next episode or between episodes, depending on what you guys want to see. Hopefully in the future, I'll be able to record more live audio, but during this episode, I was quite sick, and I definitely wasn't feeling like my voice was up to snuff for a YouTube video. But with all that being said, I hope you guys did enjoy, and I hope you'll stick around for the next episodes to come. They will be a little more infrequent than other videos just because of how much time Vintage Story takes, but I think it is a relaxing and lovely game and I definitely want to continue it more. I hope you enjoyed and I'll see you again next week. Bye bye.